By Kellogg's Frosted Flakes. Former Sixer Darryl Dawkins, whose backboard-shattering dunks earned him the moniker Chocolate Thunder, helped pave the way for breakaway rims, has died at the age of 58. The Lehigh County, Pennsylvania coroner's office said Dawkins died Thursday morning at a hospital. No cause of death was immediately announced. He spent parts of 14 seasons in the NBA with Philadelphia, New Jersey, Utah, and Detroit, and was the first player drafted directly out of high school to the NBA. The NBA family offering their condolences. Magic Johnson tweeting, "Darryl Dawkins, bigger-than-life personality, will be missed by all. He was a good friend, and I will miss him dearly." Carl Anthony Towns writing, "I'm going to miss you so much, Uncle Darryl. There will never be another Chocolate Thunder. Love you so much. Going to miss you so much." Stephen A., how will you remember Darryl Dawkins?
It's interesting because even though I'm a native New Yorker and everybody knows I love my Knicks, you know, growing up, I'm sure Skip can relate this, long before Michael Jordan came along, there was a gentleman by the name of Julius Dr. J. Irvin. I remember when Brent Musburger used to call the games, used to call some of the games on CBS and what have you, and we used to look at the Sixers games, and it used to drive me nuts because I was always rooting for the Philadelphia 76ers, and I absolutely positively loved Darryl Dawkins. He was a ferocious dunker, as everybody knows, incredibly athletic, very ferocious. We all know this. But he had one Achilles heel that used to drive me crazy. And I always joked with him in the aftermath of his professional career, because when we saw each other, he was always very, very kind, very loving, as he was to everybody. Everybody knows that if there's a better human being that was associated with the NBA, show me, because I don't know him. He was kind to everybody. He was funny. He was hilarious and what have you. But I used to get on him all the time because I remember so many times, Skip, when I used to watch this guy, and I just used to pray this guy didn't get in foul trouble, because that was his Achilles heel. I think it was like 3 or 4 times that he led the league in fouls. I think 83, 84. I think he had like an NBA record, was it 386 fouls. The year before that, it was the year the Sixers won the title. He had 379 fouls. And I think it was like, what's the year? 1980. He had 328 fouls, and it was like, if he could just stay on the court, if he could just stay in the game, they can't beat the Sixers. They can beat Boston. They'll beat everybody. They can beat Milwaukee with Sidney Moncrief and the boy. They can beat Boston with Larry Bird. They can beat the Nets with Albert King and those boys. They can beat all of them. If this dude could just stay on the court, it used to drive me nuts. But he just used to laugh it off. He said, hey, hey, baby, you can't love the physicality and then get mad at the results. And I just used to look, man, I don't know what to say to you. But, like I said, anybody that ran across him, he was incredibly sweet, very, very nice man, very kind to any and all. There isn't anybody associated with the NBA family who knew him in any way that could possibly say a bad word about him. He was just one of the sweetest individuals you ever met. He was about being an entertainer as well, and he's going to be sorely missed. When you see Shaquille O'Neal coming up with nicknames, and part and parcel, you got that from Darryl Dawkins to some degree. You see other guys coming up with stuff, and Darryl Dawkins had a lot to do with that Lovetron and all of that stuff. That's what he's from, Planet Lovetron. Yep. It just made you laugh constantly, and anytime you were around him, you couldn't help but smile because he had that kind of effect on you. So he's definitely going to be missed. Anytime you lose members of a family, of a fraternity that had that kind of personality, that magnetic personality, they're going to be missed, especially when you were as kind, as sweet as he was. I feel very, very sorry for his family, because if he was that way with us, imagine how wonderful he was to them, and imagine how much pain that they're in today for losing him. So my heart goes out to all of them.
Ditto. I was around him a couple times here at ESPN. Loved every second of being around him, because you could not love it. He was infectious with that huge personality. And as the family said in their statement last night, that huge, loving heart of his. So I am with you. In all my years covering the NBA, dating back to the 70s, I never heard a single negative word about Darryl, the person. But for perspective, and to put this man in the right perspective, I heard a whole lot of negative words about his lack of production early in his career. Because let's remember, when he came out of high school, as Molly pointed out, he was the first high school player to be drafted into the NBA. And he was called at that time the greatest high school player who had ever played up to that point. And Stephen A., as you well remember, he could never quite live up to those expectations. He tried, but everybody proclaimed him the next, because he'd played in Philadelphia, Wilt Chamberlain. And you know, and I know, Darryl Dawkins and Wilt Chamberlain had very little in common. Darryl used to say in his first couple of years, I'm not Wilt, I'm not that tall. So he went, they listed him at 6'11". I'm not sure he was even 6'11". He looked more 6'10"-ish to me. Wilt was 7'1", as you remember, Stephen A., even though it's a little before your time, he was a long 7'1". He was a track star at Kansas, was Wilt, and an extraordinary basketball player. We look at the numbers Wilt put up and we say, that's impossible. Could he do that today? Probably not quite that, but he did it then. And Darryl couldn't live up to that. And yet, what I loved the most about him was he never let that drag him or beat him down. And to deflect all that, to work through it, he used humor. He was a gifted entertainer. I got to say, gifted entertainer. Where I just waited for the post-game interview with him because he could light it up off the top of his head. He could do the equivalent of NBA stand-up comedy on cue, no rehearsal, and it would be hilarious because he had the gift of gab. He could just come up with phraseology that was almost in your league, some of the phrases you come up with. This man was blessed, and he needed that personality. And it's very interesting to me that he got very close with Dwight Howard. Dwight's gone through some of the same emotions of, I can't quite live up to what everybody says that I'm supposed to be. I look the part, but I can't always play to that level of the part. And Darryl went through that too. So I think they had a kind of a deep connection that way.
They appear to have had a deep connection. I'll take their word for it. I never asked either of them about that. I can get where you're coming from, but if you're going to bring up Dwight Howard, there's a distinct difference that everybody needs to recognize here. With Dwight Howard, them huge, big shoulders, the kind of phenomenal physical specimen that he is, you would think no one would mess with Dwight Howard. They come at him all the time.
They do.
And because of that is why he needs to play a little bit angrier, needs to be a bit more ferocious, and get at cats and remind them that he should be mentioned in the same breath as a DeMarcus Cousins when we're talking about the best big men in the game. No one tried to punk Darryl Dawkins. Nobody. That's what they didn't do. That's the one thing they didn't try to do. They didn't try to do that. You might have tried to get him in foul trouble, but that's about it. You didn't try to come at that brother in that way.
No,
not Darryl Dawkins.
Okay, but okay, one other though similarity is that Darryl was also criticized occasionally, especially earlier in his career, for not taking basketball seriously enough. Is that not what we hear about Dwight? Cutting up, laughing, goofing around before the game, shooting hook shots and pregame warm-ups, right? Doing impressions, whatever. Come on, Dwight, take the game more seriously. Well, a lot of Sixers fans, or then he went to the Nets, a lot of Nets fans, come on, Darryl, don't give us the stand-up. Play, perform better, perform at a higher level. And you'd see a burst from Darryl, and then he'd go 4 or 5 games, and he couldn't quite live up to that. Well, isn't that similar to what Dwight's gone through, not taking the game seriously enough?
Well, again, I don't think it was one of those things where, Darryl Dawkins was. I don't recall him being accused of not taking, the game seriously enough. I just think that it was one of the. I mean, for me, the years, maybe early, the years that I watched him, that's what I look at. And by the way, even though folks didn't try to come at Darryl Dawkins, it was funny. He did get in a fight with the, with Mr. Enforcer himself, Maurice Lucas, in 1977. I didn't forget that. Please don't think I forgot. But that was Maurice Lucas. You know what I'm saying? Maurice Lucas fight anybody. He was Oakley before Charles Oakley came along. Okay, so outside of that, nobody messed with Darryl Dawkins. But they might have thought that Darryl Dawkins played around a little bit too much or what have you. They might have thought that. But when he was on the court, you knew he was trying to come at you. A lot of guys question how ferociously Dwight is trying to come at you. And Dwight has to change that because Dwight is big time when he wants to be. He just needs to do it more consistently.
Well, to your final point, a whole lot of people who played with him, against him, and even now play in this league are going to miss this big man.
Yes, they are.
Yep.
No question.
Absolutely.
58 is too young, and Stephen A., as you said, our heart goes out to the loved ones of Darryl Dawkins.
Yeah.
More First Take after the break.